all directions, making it like a great cornerstone of support. Imagine that. Now we go further. Whatever means was used to accomplish the raising up of dry land, the important point is both the Bible and science recognize it as one of the stages in which the forming of the earth occurred. Now we're going to discuss land plants on the third day. The Bible accounts that the earth caused green grass to shoot forth and vegetation to shoot forth, bearing seed, and fruit trees yielding fruit according to their kind, which is upon the earth. And it came to be so. The interesting thing about trees do not become, he didn't create trees, he created the plants. Notice, let the earth cause green grass to shoot forth, vegetation and fruit trees yielding fruit. He didn't create trees. They grew. And look at the amount of time it would have taken. So we do know that the creative day was longer than 24 hours. Then it says, thus, by the close of the third creative day period, 3 broad categories of land plants had been created. The diffused light would have become quite strong by then because of the ample time that would have passed by for photosynthesis to take place to allow green vegetation to consider that process of photosynthesis. Incidentally, the account here does not mention every kind of plant that comes on the scene. Microscopic organisms, water plants, and others are not specifically named, but likely were created on this day. Now we go to the fourth day. Let the luminaries come to be in the expanse of the heavens and make a division between the day and the night. Now that's interesting, because now we're going to highlight the sun by day and the moon by night, that it may serve as signs for seasons, for days, for years. Now we're talking about earth days, not heaven days, not God days, but earth days. And they must serve as luminaries in the expanse of the heavens to shine upon the earth. And it came to be so. And God proceeded to make the 2 greater luminaries, the greater luminary to dominate the day, our sun, and the lesser luminary to dominate the night, and also the stars. Previously on the first day, the expression light came to be was used. The Hebrew word there used for light was or, meaning light in a general sense, such as when you walk outside, you can see light. Now, it doesn't literally mean it's sunlight, it just means it's daytime, because it may be overcast with clouds, but there's just light. Now, but the fourth day, the Hebrew word is mur, which means the source of light. Rotterdam, in a footnote on luminaries, in the Emphasized Bible says, in Genesis 1:3, or light diffuse. And he goes on to show that the Hebrew word meor in Genesis 1:14 means something affording light, like the sun. On the first day, diffused light evidently penetrated these swallowing bands, but the source of that light could not have been seen by an earthly observer because the cloud layers still enveloped the earth. Now this fourth day, things apparently had changed. An atmosphere initially rich with carbon dioxide may have caused an earth-wide hot climate, but the lush growth of vegetation during the third and fourth creative day periods was absorbed. Some would have absorbed some of this heat retaining blanket of carbon dioxide. The vegetation in turn would have released oxygen, a requirement for animal life. That's going to be interesting in a moment. Now, had there been an earthly observer, he would have been able to discern the sun, the moon, and the stars, which would serve as signs and for seasons and for days and for years. The moon would indicate the passing of a lunar month, and the sun passing of a solar year. The seasons could now come to be, and this fourth day would no doubt have been much milder as they became later on. Now we're going to go to the fifth day, people. We find here in the fifth day, it says, let the water swarm forth swarms of creatures. So we have all the creatures that are in the water, and God proceeded to create the great sea monsters. Another word for sea monster would be great reptiles. Let's find that out. Here at Sea Monsters, we have a footnote, and it says great reptiles. Then we have the winged creatures according to their kind, so we have the fish of the sea and all the winged creatures. This is important. Why? Because remember, without the vegetation in the sea, without the vegetation on the earth, winged creatures, it would have been of no consequence. Without the trees and the land. So by this time, several years later, and it could have been thousands, it could have been millions. We don't know how long this period was, but it was enough for the plants to diffuse all the carbon in the air, which is a lot more carbon that's in the air today. And that would have given the birds opportunity to breathe. That would have created enough oxygen in the water for the fish to breathe. Because with all that carbon in the air, that carbon would have definitely outweighed the oxygen. Now here we go. It is of interest to note that non-human creatures with which the waters were to swarm were called living souls. This term would also be applied to flying creatures that fly over the earth upon the face of the expanse, and it would also embrace forms of sea and and air life, such as sea monsters, whose fossil remains scientists have found in recent times. Here on the sixth day, we're going to find something else about a living soul. On the sixth day, let the earth put forth living souls according to their kind, domestic animals, and moving animals and beasts of the earth according to its kind, and it came to be so. Interesting. Living souls. We'll get to that in a minute. Thus, on the sixth day, land animals characterized as wild and domestic appeared. But this final day was not over. One last remarkable kind was to come. Let's find out what that was. And God went on to say, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have in subjection the fish of the sea, the flying creatures of the heavens, and the domestic animals, and all the earth. So man was to have in subjection the entire earth, and every moving animal that is moving upon the surface of the earth. And God proceeded to create man in his image. In God's image he created them, male and female he created them. There's a problem. This is Genesis, the first chapter, verse 26 and 27, and it shows that God created male and female, but in Genesis, the second chapter, we find the creation of man in verse number 7. And then we find the creation of woman in verse number 21 and 22. So, again, the Genesis account, chapters 1 through chapter 5, is not chronological order. It's not chronological in the fact that these events happen one by one. This is a time period, an epoch period, showing what happened in what stage, and the order in which things happen, but not the history in which things happen. Okay, still sticking with that sixth day, chapter 2 of Genesis apparently adds some detail. However, it is not as some have concluded. Another account of creation in conflict with Genesis chapter 1. It just takes up at a point of the third day, after dry land appeared, but before land plants were created, adding details that were pertinent to the arrival of humans. Adam, the living soul, his garden home, Eden, and the woman Eve, his wife. Let's take a look at Genesis 2, 5 through 9. Let's just go there. It says, and there was as yet no brush of the field found in the earth. Now we just talked about the vegetation. So here we're getting the detail. So it's actually going back to that period. That particular day was yet sprouting, because Jehovah God had not made it rain upon the earth, and there was no man to cultivate the ground, but a mist from the expanse of water, and the sun's heating it, would go forth from the earth, and it would water the entire surface of the ground. So plant life would have had enough water to sustain vegetation. Verse number 7. Now remember, now there is plant life at this point. And God proceeded to form the man out of the dust from the ground, and to blow into his nostrils the breath of life. Now here we have a footnote. Breath. Nishma. And this word breath of life notice what happens when a person does CPR.